Hey TV fans, Board now back with you. So tonight I'm returning to the Night Manager, so Series 2, Episode 2. Full spoilers from the start of this review. Don't forget, if you like this video and want more of this kind of content, to like it and also subscribe if you are new to the channel. And you can also leave a comment, let me know what you think of the review, let me know what you think of the episode, and you can also hit the hype button or make a one-off donation at a super chat. I should have done that at the end, but what the hell, I was going the whole hog. So I was a little bit mixed on episode 1, really. It was the first episode back after a very long time, and I thought it did feel a little bit slow and rusty. I thought there was quite a lot going on. So, yeah, it was like a solid episode overall, but I was a little bit okay. It might take a bit of getting into this. I'm not quite sure it's going to be as good as the original show. So there was definitely issues with episode 1. I think this is a better episode. Like, this episode has a bit more momentum. This episode you get a bit more of like the classic spy type stuff and the mystery elements. And I think although like some spy shows it can be okay, we've done this before, this is kind of by the numbers, this isn't very interesting to watch. There's just something about Tom Hiddleston in this kind of role and him going on this kind of mission and the cat and mouse games that you tend to get, which is very sort of exciting and fun to watch. So this episode definitely has a bit more going on, a bit more. It's just a little bit more clinical and clear cut, and it's like, okay, we're now getting to the heart of the mission. Still with one or two like issues, but not bad. I think it's getting into its groove more in episode 2. So what happens as a result of what happened in Spain in the last episode is the India Famira character, who has a bigger role this time. She is the boss of the operation, the Night Owls. So as a result of last time, she decides to disband the operation, and she calls in Sally, the Haley Squires character, and she gives her a grueling. She's questioning her, and the other thing is that Alex, aka Jonathan, has been left for dead in the hotel. So it's assumed he's dead, and he's kind of gone into hiding again, and is kind of going off book. So as far as superiors are concerned, they all think he's dead. So that's the thing later on. But she grills the Haley Squires character, and there's some choice lines in the scene, like, you know, the night owls are meant to watch and observe, survey. They're not supposed to hunt. So there's some pretty good lines from India Famira. It was good getting a bit more of her character in this episode. But ultimately she shuts them down, gives her a bit of a tongue lashing, and says, if anybody asks you about it, you were never in Spain. She sends her home. But it does seem that, I forget her name now, Maya, I think, the India Famira character. It does seem that Maya's got her own agenda, because later on she goes to the funeral, Rex's funeral, and she gives a speech. And after the funeral, she's talking to Basil, and very British name Basil, but she's kind of saying the opposite of what she said during his eulogy, where she's like waxing lyrical about what a great man he was, what a great father, and she's talking about what he believed in when it came to like MI6. And afterwards, when she's talking to Basil, she's like questioning all that. It's like, well, what did he really stand for, and was what he stood for really that worthwhile? This sort of stereotypical like image of like England and greener pastures and queen and country, all the rest of it, or I guess technically king and country now. So she's sort of ripping that down and questioning that. And even though she shut down like Operation Night Owl, she wants the files that Rex had. So she's getting Basil to help her with that. So that's something to keep an eye on. And India Famira is very watchable. Like her personality really comes across quite well in this episode. So she's another character where it's a little bit hard to tell where her allegiances lie. It's a bit hard to tell if she's gonna ultimately turn out to be on the good side of things or not. Like she could easily turn out to be like another shady government official, but it does seem at the moment then, even though she's doing it in her own way, then she's maybe trying to bring down the corruption and get to the root of that. So anyway, the main thrust of things is then in this episode he actually ends up being called Matthew, which is very confusing. But Pine anyway is kind of going off book. He's assumed dead, and he meets up with this guy who gave him the identity originally. He worked with Rex to come up with his new identity. And at first, it's quite a tense scene because he's holding him not gunpoint, at knife point. He's asking where Sally is, and the other guy says, "Well, she's on his way," and like he's telling Alex slash Jonathan, then you can't really go off on your own. Like it's too dangerous. You need help. So they regroup. It's this nice little seaside setting, like a coastal town. Sally meets them there, and she does a good job in the episode. Like Haley Squires sells this stuff well about what happened in Spain, where a couple of the agents died, and she's very much like, well, it shouldn't have been them. They shouldn't have been put in that position. Bill, I think his name is. He's got like a lovely family, and this is. I've got no one, so if anyone, it should have been me. So she does a really good job in selling that and selling the regret. And she says to this is a little bit of okay, this happens a lot, this sort of line, but she says to Jonathan, then I'm not going to give up, like otherwise their death is for nothing. We're going to do this. So they're now in a way carrying on the Night Owls, even though it's like in private. So they still do their own mission. So they send Jonathan undercover once again. He's now called Matthew Ellis. He's like a financial advisor, like expert. And they sent, and this is where the episode gets fun and quite entertaining, where you see him do the spy stuff and the covert stuff. Sally gives him a new identity, so that scene is quite good fun, where she's like describing the whole backstory to this Matthew Ellis about how his mother's kind of slept with everybody under the sun in this one location, and there's just some fun, snappy dialogue with Haley Squires in this scene. And what's clever about that stuff is that comes back up later, like when he gets in undercover gets close to Teddy. Teddy is asking him about this stuff as well, because they come up with this identity for a guy who was like a rich businessman in, like, was it Japan? Yeah, Japan, I think it was. And he's grilling him about, well, why he gave that up, why he left Japan. And so I quite like this scene, that when they're setting up his identity, because then he gets questioned about that later on, and he has to sort of recite it and kind of think a little bit on his feet, because things get dicey. The tennis game I quite enjoyed, like when he first goes undercover, he's playing this other rich guy at tennis, and it's like a competitive back and forth, and Matthew loses the game and gets all frustrated. And once again, I think stuff like that, it's fun because you don't know if he's just playing the other guy, like if he's just doing it as part of the cover. Like, could he really have beaten the other guy? I like to think no. I like to think he's just not great at tennis and the other guy is, and it's one thing where he's out of his depth. But that was a fun little scene, and that's where Santos starts watching him and keeping an eye on him from courtside. And I think one of the weaker parts so far, and it's still true in this episode, is that Santos is a weak villain. Like, he just doesn't have that much personality. He's a little bit of a cliche. They're going back to the whole Colombian drug lords things and arm dealers, and it's all a little bit cliched. Like, it works fine for the plot, and they're definitely doing some fun things, but yeah, there's just not that much to the actor or to the character, I don't think, at the moment. He's not that interesting to watch. And I think maybe it sticks out a bit. That's why they're trying to paint him as this disciple of Roper and try and give him an extra bit of oomph because of that. But I did feel it in this episode where his interactions with Pine, I just didn't think that this drug lord character was like that interesting. But when they're mentioning like stuff like, okay, Roper first did like drug deals in Colombia in the 90s, that does feel that, although it's a cliche and a bit of a stereotype, and it must be a bit cringe if you're from Colombia. It's like, okay, they're always portraying us as like drug lords or arms dealers, but I think it was around about the 90s where that sort of thing was becoming big business, and like sort of rich guys did start investing in it, and you started get I mean, I might be talking out of my ass, but things like that, cartels and that, you did start to get more awareness of it. But it's just unfortunate, and so far this villain isn't that compelling or interesting to watch, and is always going to pale in comparison to Hugh Laurie, I think. But there's other fun stuff happening in the plot. Like, the plot itself is quite fun to watch, and Pine doing the spying stuff is quite good fun, and the stuff with Azana, who's features more in this episode, is also quite good fun. And yeah, there's a little bit of like intrigue and bite going on elsewhere. Luckily, it's just, yeah, the villain stands out as not being great. So Pine gets invited to a fundraiser, and it's again the charity which Roper set up. And at the fundraiser, he sees Osana. Osana's there, and we find out that she's the girlfriend of Santos. And she says later on, there's a story about how she became his girlfriend after like a 4-hour dance, and she basically was Rex's mole. Like, she was sent in undercover by Rex, and she now has access to him because she's his girlfriend, and also based on that dance, supposedly he gave her a big role, so she's now in charge of his operations. So Pine grills her, and again, I'm quite enjoying her character. I'm quite enjoying the back and forth between her and Pine. I think she's a different kind of character than the Elizabeth Debicki was in the first series. Like, she's a little bit more cat and mouse, where she likes to play the game and kind of likes to keep you guessing just what exactly is. But she has some playful lines. Like she has a line about, I don't know the meaning of the word polite, and there's this whole thing when they're getting to know each other later over drinks, where she has quite a fun line there. Yeah, I actually forget what it was now, but there's a couple of fun lines and there's a little bit of banter back and forth. And yeah. Oh yeah, I think it's something to do with when they're trying to agree a deal. It's like Roxana loves you, and she's like, "Well, I didn't say I loved him. I just said he could be a good business partner." And that becomes the thing where Jonathan, who's like threatening her with, "Okay, we could," because he's figured out that she tipped off Teddy before, and that's who came, or his men came to rescue her. So he's like, well, we could have you up on like conspiracy to murder, and he's turning up the heat on her, and whether he could actually have enough evidence of that, I don't know, but he could definitely make her life sticky. So he's trying to pressure her to get him in this plum position for this trade and make him the money man. And so there's this whole thing with her whether can they really trust her after last time, and Sally's also questioning that, and it makes her a much more interesting character to me than Teddy is. So yeah, she gets him in, and there's this exciting sort of bit where they're like getting high and drinking and dancing, and once again, there's a fun thing of how much is Matthew, as I'll call him, for this, how much is he being taken in by this stuff? Is he being seduced by that? Well, is he generally being caught off guard? Or is he in control? Like, is he playing along, like playing them for one? Because at one point he gets intoxicated, he falls into the pool, he almost drowns, and they drag him out, and Teddy like uses this to question him. So and it's maybe the scene of the episode where he on the spot he comes up with this story about how he's down on his luck because he lost so many millions for a Swiss bank, and now they want the money back. And he says, I'm secretly money laundering because I've got like 25 million which I owe them. And so Santos is like, well, I can clean your money for you. And so it's quite a good little tense scene because he's lubricated and he seems to be under the spotlight of Santos, and it's quite a well done scene, that one. So ultimately, there's a bit of cat and mouse, but he's in like he's part of the operation. So there's another little bit which I'm not so keen on too much, but like there's a sub thing where you've got all these young guys at the party who's like waiters, and they're people who I think Santos has taken in as like orphans or something. And one of them, like Jonathan, has his eye on, and he does some research into him. So there's a scene where he goes to his home, basically, like where his sister is, and it's like the Mussolini because the one of the parents, I think it's the father, has died or something, so he's buried there, and it's not the father, it's the mother, sorry, but like he's asking questions to a priest, and he learns at one point then Roper is like the father of this kid. So there's this connection now to Teddy where Teddy is basically carrying on the family business and is now seems to be inheriting these kids, and Roper was its father, so there's a direct link there. And that stuff was a little bit of like a tangent. That stuff was a bit of okay, this is not that connected to the main plot. Like, do we really need this? There's also some stuff with Sally and like the next shipment which she's trying to infiltrate, and she's got a point of contact that she talks to, and it's like there's all this drama about can they infiltrate it in time? Like there's only a certain amount of time before the drug lords get to it, and so she's kind of going back and forth with this contact about we've got to do this to get the crates open and get to them, otherwise our opportunity would be gone. And that stuff's fine. Like I do, as I said, enjoy Hayley Squires in this, and she has a nice little role. She definitely has some good dialogue, and she's one of the characters I think you really enjoy on screen and root for. So yeah, this is a better episode. I think there's still a spark to it than is a little bit missing from the original series, and once again, the villain is a little bit duff. But I definitely enjoyed this episode more. So that's the Night Manager episode 2. Let me know what you think of this so far, what you think of it compared to the original show, and like and subscribe as always, as I said. But thanks for listening. More TV reviews soon, more film reviews soon. But take care, guys, and I'll see you later. Bye.